On today's episode of The Unwritten Rule, pretty grim start, obviously. Kicked things off with the Oklahoma recap. Looking very dark for Mizzou men's basketball headed into postseason. We gave our kind of just big picture stuff, thoughts on it. Tried to find some sort of solution to the defense. Just talked about what's been continuing to go wrong with the defense. All of the above, basically, as Mizzou looks for some sort of answer the end of regular season play. Talk some big picture tournament stuff, of course, as well. Kenny and Payton, at least then, had a little bit more of a positive spin. Talked to Jacob Infante, our resident NFL draft expert, about the Mizzou draft prospects. So exciting conversation with him. That obviously a lot more positive than the Oklahoma game recap, and a lot of good info. Infante's super plugged in with all the draft stuff. So had some really good thoughts from him about where those guys stand heading into March here as we get closer to the NFL draft. So great conversation with Infante. Then we finished up with quick hits, a ton more Mizzou stuff that we covered. And that's some women's basketball stuff, some accolades for some former Mizzou Tigers as well. So plenty to dive into. I won't say fully enjoy because you can't really do that at the beginning of the show. But great conversation with Infante nonetheless. So I'll get right into it. The Unwritten Rule starts right now.
Marcel, where are you going with that disc? You are not putting that on again. Marcel, okay, if you press that button, you are in very, very big trouble.
Attention. Everybody stop what you're doing. It's time for The Unwritten Rule, a Mizzou sports podcast brought to you by the Believe Network, alongside Payton Haverman and Kenny Van Doren. Here is your host, Jack Knowlton.
Welcome back to the Unwritten Rule. Today is Friday, March 7th, and I think we're wishing it was February 7th. I said Payton might not come back on the show if Mizzou lost to Oklahoma. We got him back on the show, had to drag him by his ear to his seat so that he would talk about this game. I don't really know how to go. We were talking pre-show, we were kind of like, what direction do we go? And I mean, sometimes you can kind of plan these game breakdowns out, but Missouri lost 96-84 to Oklahoma. They're tail spinning to end the regular season. They've lost 3 of their last 4 games. And really the breakdown of the actual game itself against the Sooners is sort of a moot point given that larger context and what Missouri seemed to have in its grasp or within its grasp after it beat Alabama that it has just let slip. I feel like an idiot for texting, I know I've texted you guys, I hoped they were able to win out after beating Alabama. It seemed possible to me. But quite the opposite has happened. This team has absolutely collapsed. It started on the defensive end. That feels like the big thing to talk about from Oklahoma. But, I mean, guys, I'll just let you kind of spiel away. I mean, I don't want to ask if it's time to hit the panic button because I think the answer is obviously yes. But I mean, is there any way something can be salvaged as you head into March here, or is this team? You know what? I'll start with this because I saw Gabe DeArmond from Power Mizzou quote tweet this. Someone said, has Mizzou just run out of gas this year? And Gabe kind of said, I don't see why that would ever be the case, but given what you watched in Norman, Oklahoma, it's maybe a fair thing to ask. I mean, I don't know. I'll let you guys spiel away, but it's a tailspin, and it really sucks given what was within reach just a couple of weeks ago. Bad vibes for Mizzou men's basketball, Payton.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing. From 2 weeks ago, you think maybe, wow, this team has like a Final Four ceiling, and like in 2 weeks, you go from thinking that to like, this is going to be like, if they cling on to the 5, they're one and done. They're going to run into a 12 and be done. Like, that's how I feel. And you know what? That's not being an overreactionary panic, like just fear monger. I really think they've earned kind of that drop in status with every single performance they've played outside of South Carolina, who came into that game like 1-13 in SEC play. I've never seen a defense play so cataclysmically terrible for so many games in a row. Again, with the exception of South Carolina, which looks like just a straight anomaly at this point. It's not like 2022-23 under Dennis Gates, where you could tell they just kind of didn't have the athletes to play how they really wanted to play, and were just giving up like an ungodly amount of 3-pointers. I mean, this team gets beat at everything on the defensive end now. They can't. The guards just can't stop anyone from getting dribble penetration because they play way too aggressive at this point, I think, is a big reason for it. Oklahoma was just spamming basic pick and rolls, and Mizzou would try and double the ball handler, and it would lead to an easy outlet bucket. I mean, Godwin for Oklahoma had 12 points, and it probably would have been like 40 if he didn't roll his ankle in the first half, because it was just the same pick and roll every play. They have no good interior presence right now. Every single guy that's just camped out in the paint is only in position to hack people at this point and send teams to the line. I mean, Oklahoma went 25 for 26 from the line. None of the I know people are going to complain about officiating. There were like 0 bad calls in this game. Mizzou just has no idea how to guard anybody right now when they're not forcing an ungodly amount of steals like they were early in SEC play and non-con play. This is what they look like. I think the book is completely out. Missouri has been thoroughly figured out on the defensive end. I have no idea how you even fix it at this point, because it came at the worst time of the year. There's one regular season game left, and then you have SEC tournament, and then it's go time. That's your season on the line every single night on the floor. I don't think they have time to fix it, to be honest. I don't think it's something at this point I would expect to be fixed in season. I think they probably are just kind of out of time, quite frankly. The odds just don't favor it at this point. They're so far from looking like they have any idea of how to stop just anything on that end. It's not 3-pointers. It's just they're getting killed inside over and over. And it's just hyperactivity on the perimeter is just leading to just blown assignments left and right. Pick and rolls are just being guarded horribly. It's really just a disgrace to watch half the time. It's so embarrassing. It makes me want to throw my head against the wall over and over. I cannot keep watching them play like this. It has gotten just unbearable to watch.
And I think that's the answer, Jack, to the question you asked earlier that popped up in one of Gabe's replies is just, this is a team that's very deep. It's a team with a very deep bench. It has arguably, not even arguably, I think he is the 6th man of the year in the SEC in Caleb Grill, and there's other guys on that bench that have performed as starters, as scorers, and got into an opportunity to play in the SEC, and it turned out pretty well in a bench setting. But I think that is the case just for Missouri, is that Missouri just hasn't adapted. Teams figured them out. Dennis Gates really credited some of his assistants for defensive play and steals and just how they were performing early on in SEC play. You haven't seen him really shout out anyone, I think, since the South Carolina game, which Payton pointed out, kind of an anomaly in this stretch of games. They've three losses in their last 4 games, and that's just one of the biggest things. They're not adapting. And you look back to the Kansas game. That was a game where, okay, maybe Missouri has an opportunity. Missouri really figured out Kansas. And you're not seeing Missouri figuring out anyone else deep into SEC play. And I think it's maybe a good thing to get these out of the way now, but at the same time, it's going right into conference play. You're losing your opportunity for a double bye. You're losing an opportunity to rest your guys a little bit longer. And I think this Kentucky game really kind of shows you where the energy of the team is, going out there. I think they can drop to maybe 8th in the SEC, but still in that regard, how are they going to get into postseason play and, play flat-footed against Kentucky? I think that's going to be the biggest question mark moving forward.
They are 69th in adjusted defensive efficiency, according to KenPom. That is the 2nd worst among the top 40 teams ranked overall in KenPom. They're still 16th. The only team worse is UConn. They're 107th in defensive efficiency. And yeah, Kenny, I mean, big picture stuff, SEC tournament-wise, NCAA tournament-wise. Yeah, we did the tabulations before the show. They can jump to as high as 5th, and can go to as low as 8th. But Payton, I mean, you said it pre-show, and I think I agree. It kind of doesn't matter. I don't anticipate this team playing more than one game in the SEC tournament unless, they're going to just get in a track meet with people, which they have a really elite offense. The problem with that, they're 132nd in the country in tempo. This isn't a team that, they like to get out in transition, but they don't necessarily like to go fast. Sometimes you can offset some bad defense with a lot of good rebounding, which Missouri can get. A lot of good rebounding, you have a lot of possessions, but I don't think this team necessarily does that. I think it's a smartly run offense, but it's not I don't think I'd necessarily describe it as run and gun unless they're forcing a million turnovers. And yeah, I mean, Kentucky, you look at Saturday, I think we're expecting them to be favored. Kentucky might score 120 points on them. I mean, that's one of the best offenses in the country. They're not going to have Jackson Robinson. We talked about that, but I mean, Kentucky has boat race people. I mean, they had I think their first game of SEC play was like 106 to 103 against Florida. Florida's like a top 5 defense. So, I mean, I have no idea what they're going to be able to do. The things they're going to be able to do in Mizzou Arena to that, and slice like a knife through butter. You're right, Payton, that it's frustrating. I don't even know, like you said, what I have too much to add qualifying wise, because you're right. I think it's almost too late to fix unless you can somehow, change something drastically and let your players adapt to it. But I mean, we saw things last year he tried to do and the players weren't able to adapt. It was a much less talented team last year. I mean, I guess let's put a microscope on it briefly. When you two look at Kentucky, I mean, what has to happen? Does the final score of this game need to just be does it just need to be an NBA game? Does it need to be 110 to 109? I mean, I guess how does Missouri win that game? Can they do anything on the defensive end, or where do maybe some possible answers come from, whether it's defensively, offensively, coaching, whatever it is?
Kentucky is probably, Alabama was kind of similar, but I think Kentucky even more so. I think Kentucky's the last team in the world you want to get into kind of a shootout with, because Kentucky will almost certainly win every single time. Kentucky, like you said, is a lights out offense. It had to, for Missouri to win this game, and really just any game the rest of the year, something has to change on the defensive end. I don't know where to even start, but they either have to figure out how to start generating a lot of steals again, which I kind of don't have a lot of faith in anymore, because I think teams realize if we use more than a fourth of our brain and don't just throw sloppy, lazy passes across the court that Caleb Grill and Tamar
like
Bates,
Alabama did.
Yeah, Tamar Bates and Caleb Grill, or every other guard on the team, just sells their soul to try and steal, and more often than not come up empty. We will be just fine. We will wind up getting probably 50 offensive boards, because that's all of a sudden a thing Missouri can't stop. They were doing such a great job compared to the last couple of years, rebounding early in SEC play and non-con play. I don't know what's happened in the last few weeks, really. But that's become a big issue. It's just, they have to figure something out. I don't know what it is. You have to either generate a ton of steals, or you have to just tone down the aggressiveness a bit, which I don't expect them to really want to do either. And just flat out guard guys. Keep guys in front of you. Stop doubling the same guy on a pick and roll every play. Stop letting guards just get dribble penetration every single trip up the floor. I don't know. It feels like I'm watching, like I'm in an insane asylum watching the same thing over and over at the time. But they can't get in a shootout with Kentucky. I don't think you can bank on that being a way to win, because Kentucky just has so much offensive firepower. Kentucky is horrific defensively. But I trust them a whole lot more right now than I trust Missouri.
I just wanted to look back at this. I don't have too much input on just Kentucky, but I'm going back on a bunch of these schedules. Can you guys guess the last time Mizzou played a ranked team on senior night?
Oh, man. In basketball? I have no idea.
March 5th, 2011.
Oh, wow.
Kansas.
Yeah,
Number 2 in the country.
Wow.
Yeah, that honestly is less of a indictment on Missouri and more of an indictment on the SEC. I mean, this conference is gone from people are gonna this year is gonna skew a lot of people's perception on the SEC because that conference is just it's maybe the best of all time if it gets 14 teams in. Speaking of that, like I'll mention that in a second. The only thing I'll throw in with Kentucky, I think the matchup I'm probably watching for, if you're talking about the rebounding, then is their big. They have a really skilled big. His name's Amari Williams. He's British. He's from Nottingham, England. And he's kind of a do-it-all guy for them. He can bring the ball up the floor. He'll stretch. That seems like a terrible matchup for a team that can't rebound. He's good on the glass. He's probably the guy I'm looking the most for. I mean, the other ones speak for themselves. They have Otega Owe. He can make threes. Kobe Brea can make a ton of threes. Robinson's obviously out, but they still have Lamont Butler who can make threes and defend. And then they've got guys who have stepped up. They have a guy named Travis Perry, who I think is like the new.
He was a guy Mizzou really wanted.
Yeah, I think he set the record for like points in his career in high school. He scored like 5,000 points or something ridiculous. So yeah, they have guys who can score. I'm very worried about how that game is going to go. And like we said, if it's a loss, depending on what happens elsewhere, that's 8th in the SEC tournament. That feels like a moot point. I mean, it's worth mentioning just given matchups wise, but I mean, I don't know. I'm just not convinced. Do you guys think this team, I won't say South Carolina because they did beat South Carolina in this stretch. Do they beat LSU if they play them again, or does LSU make enough? I don't think we don't need to get into
LSU is just kind of almost talent deficient at this point. I just don't think they have the horses. I'd probably say Missouri still wins that one. But I mean, right now, like if Missouri played Mississippi State again, Mississippi State would win. If Missouri played Arkansas right now 10 more times, I think Arkansas probably wins 7 or 8 of them. Missouri is just in such a bad state right now. I really don't trust them to beat just about anybody right now.
I know this isn't like a fair question maybe to throw out there, but I think is there still, a positive for Missouri fans looking back on this season, and not the way like the regular season ended, but who would have expected this? I mean, coming off of a team that didn't win a single game in SEC play, I don't think anyone was really expecting 10 plus wins in just SEC regular season. I mean, is that still a positive to you guys, no matter how the regular season ends?
When we look back on this season, we'll really probably think, man, what a great rebound season that was, and what a fun team that was, because for 75 to 80% of the year, that was absolutely true. I mean, they have some truly, the Kansas win in general probably stamps a pretty big place in people's hearts in regards to this team's legacy. They're going to be the only team that winds up beating Florida in Gainesville this year, which is really unbelievable. And the Alabama game, that was like, after that game, I really thought like this team has like some Final Four potential, but it is also hard. It is also, I think, fair to be pretty damn disappointed with how hard they have dropped since that Alabama game. When they beat Alabama, you're legitimately looking at like if they win out, or even if they just lose 1 or 2, you're looking at maybe a 3 seed, maybe a 4 seed. Double bye, like
a top 4 seed in the best iteration of the SEC that has ever been.
Cool. I thought they were a shoo-in to get the school record for SEC wins in a year. Now they are playing to tie the record on Saturday instead of for the outright record. That's disappointing. It's very disappointing how this one has ended. And it's just kind of disappointing to see the team kind of get figured out the way they have, especially just a few guys in particular, like Trent Pierce, who we were really encouraged by, has really had a tough end of the year. Jacob Cruz was starting to rebound. He's looked pretty rough in the last couple of games. It's just a very disheartening ending. Like, it's a bittersweet team, I think, because yes, this is a great, you can't call this season a failure. Absolutely not. No way in hell will I categorize a season like this a failure, considering where they came from. But it is bittersweet because it's like you saw the ceiling they like kind of, it's almost like they flew too close to the sun in that Alabama game.
Ooh, that's a good comparison. I don't know. Kenny, you have a thought on your own hypothetical there? I kind of agree with Payton. I don't know. I mean, I would like to think some things are still ahead of them, but I can't really get there right now.
Yeah, I just go back. I put this up on the YouTube if anyone's watching with us there, and looking at the predictions. Hindsight's 2020. But Jack, you had 8-10, I had 7-11, and Payton, you had 8-10 for a second consecutive year. Jack, if you predicted 10-8 again, I mean, you would have been pretty close on that one. Yeah. But I think just going back, I think it kind of still blows out the expectations. But I think expectations change, and I think that's just the one big thing you'll remember about this year is, I think at the halfway point, I think even at the Kansas game, you kind of realize that those numbers that we put out there didn't mean anything anymore. Like those were numbers that Mizzou was going to best no matter what, but it was a matter of how many wins were they going to best those record predictions by. So I think in the end, there are a lot of positives from the season. It's not over. I feel like sometimes in some parts of this conversation we're having, it sounds like we're talking about a funeral.
I was just going to say, I think like we're sort of digging the legacy of this season. Like we're talking it like it's over and we're not even in postseason play yet, but that's how hard it is to get yourself to believe that they're going to win a game in the postseason. Sorry.
Yeah, I understand the frustrations there. And it still kind of goes back to a mindset that I kind of put out there. I just kind of heard from Rick Pitino. Just, you want to get these out of the way early. And, hopefully for Missouri's sake and for those fans, I think you're wanting, no matter, how much that Kentucky win or loss affects you, you don't want to see this team come out flat footed. You want to see different energy. You want to see kind of like that Texas response from a couple months ago, a couple weeks ago. And see a team that comes out and pretends like those past couple games never happened. And I think just for the betterment of that program, that's exactly what you want to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, the nice thing about Dennis Gates is you're never gonna, he's gonna get his team to fight. I mean, you don't go through last year and have some of the games like shoot, they were up with 2 minutes left against Georgia in the SEC tournament in a meaningless game. After losing every single one of your conference regular season games, he's going to get those guys to fight. That is the positive of Dennis. The thing we need to see now from Dennis is the X's and O's stuff. Like Payton said, it's got to be some sort of schematic change. Like we know he's going to rally them. He's going to have those guys ready to go for all their postseason games and all that stuff. But I mean, he's got a
nice U-Haul receipt, Kenny.
Kenny.
Man, my bad. I was opening that up on another tab while you were talking.
We might want to cut
I was
that
so
out
distracted.
in case there's
like, what? That was a good comedic injection into what has been.
Yeah, just look back on that later. Make sure my credit card information wasn't on there. I'm sorry, I got an email while we were talking.
We'll cover that up. We'll keep this in, but we'll cover that up on the YouTube.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't fill it up. If I filled it up 2 more gallons, I wouldn't have to pay $9. But that's what that's what just came in the mail. It said I didn't fill up the tank all the way. Also, I live in St. Louis now. Background's different. That's why it looks like this.
Kenny moved. He's going through moving.
He's living with our friend Aaron.
Yeah, roommates.
Yeah, fans of the show. They just never go away.
You're right. I lost my train of thought. Big picture. I mean, brackets. I think it's worth saying again. Similar to the SEC tournament. I mean, Lenardi has them as Payton. I think it's the second to last 5 seed right now.
The last 5 right now.
The last 5 seed. Jerry Palm had them as a 5. I think playing Liberty. Liberty, very good defense. I mean, I wonder, is 2 losses here enough to slip to the 6? Maybe.
Yes.
So again, just kind of disappointing overall. I don't even want to begin to think about the scrappy mid-major that's going to beat them and go on a Cinderella run as an 11 or a 12 seed. But that does feel inevitable, but
I'd almost rather be a 6 and just play a lousy mid-major or like a lousy high major than be the 5-12 that everybody knows is not good for the high seed, because that's what this team feels like now.
Totally.
I feel like Oklahoma probably that loss probably eliminates any more chance you have of climbing up to a 4. 6 very much in play. They're not going to fall to a 7, but probably looking at either a 5 or a 6 now, and that's not fun. That's not what you were hoping for 2 weeks ago.
Hey, I think, bright side here is that's pun intended for me saying that word. I got dinner with a friend tonight, and she went to KU, and we were talking about college basketball, and she said she was a pretty emotional year just being a Kansas fan, and the expectations are always pretty high. But she thinks I was talking to her, and I was like, Mizzou's probably just going to be a 5 seed if if it beats Kentucky. And she was like, no way, like they'll be a 2 or a 3. Have you seen how they're playing this year? So there are, Kansas fans out there that think this Mizzou team is better than it is. So I guess that is a positive for you Mizzou fans.
Well, and they stink, so at least there's that. But
Yeah, they're terrible.
I
I think they're going to be like a 7,
yeah,
and like
7.
they've
7
never
is
been
what I've
below a
seen.
4 under Self.
So that's nice. Kentucky is Saturday. It's on ESPN. It's 11 a.m. It starts the slate. Hopefully it starts the slate with a Tigers win. I know I'm still gonna. I mean, I'm a hopeful guy. You guys have known me for several years now. Like I'm still gonna walk into the Kentucky game and be excited. I'm gonna walk into the SEC tournament and be excited. I'm gonna walk into the NCAA tournament and be excited. But it's hard to get there right now. But that's the best we can do is hope.
Better man than me, Knowlton.
I
ready
want
to
to say, from a recruiting perspective too, this game could be pretty big. I only know of one visitor that's going to be there. That's Scotty Atkinson, who's a 2027 guard in the St. Louis area. He grew up in Southern Illinois, so he was a big Kentucky fan growing up, but that allegiance is kind of looking more to the schools that are interested in him, like Illinois, Mizzou, and some others. But he told me, like, I asked him if he was going to be at this game, and he kind of lit up, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to be there. Like, this is a big one." So I think just from a recruiting standpoint too, a win here would probably impress some guys, especially Scotty Atkinson, who's top 50 in his class in the class of 2027. That's a guy you want to keep home.
Yeah, most definitely. So there you go. Good recruiting piece there, Kenny. All right, there's your very grim Mizzou recap. Hopefully it's a little bit better on Sunday, but I mean, who knows now? I thought Oklahoma would be automatic, so can't predict anything anymore these days. Cats are very good. They're 19th. Kind of crazy though that I mean, if Missouri does lose this, Kentucky and Mizzou will finish with the same record, which is, I don't know, just those two teams alone, separate from any of the context of the season, just kind of wild. But I guess I'll leave with that. We will have much more positive conversation, or Kenny and Payton will at the very least, with our in-house resident draft expert, the best draft expert that you should only listen to him for his draft takes. It's Jacob Infante. Great interview with him, talking some Mizzou in the NFL draft, all that stuff. Exciting times. Guys are, or at least Membou is climbing. So stick around and we will kick to ourselves talking to Mr. Jacob.
And now for something completely different.
All right. We're going to welcome on a very special guest, Jacob Infante, making his return to the Unwritten Rule. I think this is the second time he's been on the podcast version. He spent a lot of his time with us on the radio back in the KCOU days. But Jacob, man of many talents, man of many bylines as well these days, of course, always with the Windy City Gridiron, but now with Pro Football Network, Pro Football and Sports Network. So those are the two you want to find Jacob for his excellent NFL draft coverage. And I think the best way to start this off, Jacob, talking about you and being an NFL draft guy, is you don't choose one team. You're very unbiased. You just are, straight arrow when it comes to that. You bought a NFL hat at the scouting combine. Walk us through that decision and how it really paid off for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love the game, man. I love football. I love sports. I just want to rep the game. So I bought the NFL hat, just like a black hat with the NFL logo on it. And I tried to bring back like the similar vibes of the Rob Lowe picture that someone took of him at I think it was like a Packers game or something, where he's just in the crowd with an NFL hat on, like no team, no nothing. So that's me. Yeah, that's me on the screen there, wearing my NFL hat, looking at my most dashing. And then, I tried to replicate the famous Rob Lowe picture. I'm not as handsome as Rob Lowe, but I try to be. So that's I love football. What can I say? That's the only thing I can really say.
Yep.
All right, glad we got 2 minutes out of that one. So let's get into the actual part of this interview. Jacob, Luther Burden, I think that's as good a place as any to start. He came into this NFL Combine kind of someone a bit on the decline stock wise. I know Daniel Jeremiah kind of started the trend of not having him in the round one mock. His latest mock before the Combine, I believe, had Luther slipping out of round one, and a lot of fellow draft guys also did not have Luther going round one. Mel Kiper being a notable one for that. But he went out and ran a 4.41 official at the Combine in the 40. I know that was a very, very unexpectedly good time for him. He measured in at 6 feet flat. I know there were some people wondering what maybe his height would be. Did have small hands, but a lot of people noted that drops weren't really an issue for him in college. So coming out of the Combine, I'm curious what you think his stock is at, and if he maybe solidified himself as a round one guy.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I just saw the notification. I feel like you guys should know the Chargers just released Joey Bosa.
What are we gonna do with that, Jacob?
I don't know. It's nothing to do with Mizzou. I'm just saying,
What, folks? He does have. He did mention he has the NFL hat on.
I have the NFL hat. I love the league. It's not just one team. But yeah, I think it's interesting, kind of seeing this trend with Luther Burden over the last couple of weeks and the last month or so, where it seems like a lot of analysts are starting to sour on him. I mean, I don't know if it's as much that as it is there are other prospects who have a little bit more momentum as it stands right now. I think part of it can come down to prospect fatigue. I mean, we see it all the time where a prospect has been in the spotlight for a considerable amount of time. And, they have a good year. Obviously Luther's numbers dropped from 2024 compared to what he had in 23. But at the same time, I feel like so much of that is outside of his control. I mean, he was still very efficient with the touches he got. He still possesses all the athletic tools and the physicality that he had last year. So it's not like, he suddenly got a lot slower, suddenly got a lot weaker. I mean, that's simply not the case. I just think that a lot more evaluators seem to be infatuated with Tetairoa McMillan and the size advantage that he brings. And then you have someone like Matthew Golden from Texas who exploded in the college football playoff and ran an incredible 40-yard dash time. I think that he's someone who's getting some looks as well. And wherever you value Travis Hunter at. So I still view Luther as a first-round talent. I really do. I think that what he brings after the catch is arguably the best in this class. I think the 4.41 40-yard dash was a really good time for him. I mean, and obviously anyone who watches this game can tell you he's a good athlete, but for him to put it into numbers, I think that's something that a lot of teams value. Is obviously, they have the in-game analytics and things like that, and they can see miles per hour and stuff like that. But just the pure old-fashioned combine testing numbers is something that teams still very much respect and consider when they're making these decisions. So I think Luther had a good combine, especially that with that 40-yard dash. So does he go first round? I don't know. I feel like there are a handful of those teams picking in the 20s that could really use another wide receiver. And, especially for a team that's a potential playoff contender, if they're picking in the 20s or 30s, I think that'd be a spot where, those would be some teams where Luther could potentially contribute. And, I know the Steelers stand out as one of them, the Broncos, potentially the Washington Commanders. I know the Seahawks just cut Tyler Lockett and they're looking to maybe trade DK Metcalf. So there are options. I feel like he should go round one. I feel like he probably will go round one, but it may not be as high as maybe some Mizzou fans were hoping going into the year.
That's good to know too. I mean, I think a lot of people when they see a player slipping on the draft board, they think it's a detriment to maybe something over the past couple months, something within that season, stats wise. But sometimes it is just a matter of there are other guys on the draft boards that are just moving up and passing them up, and there's not going to be 7 wide receivers maybe taken in that first round, so you kind of just start to see guys slip, and a wide receiver that's probably not in the same conversation as Luther Burden, but still up there looking like he's going to get drafted. Is Theo Wease Jr. A little bit of a different path to where he came. I think it's not talked about enough. How much that move from Oklahoma to Mizzou made him an NFL talent, made him a pro level player. Just getting in a different offense, getting a change of scenery. Of course, had the broken hand, did not get to compete in his bowl game, the Shriners Bowl, East West Shriners Bowl. But getting out there, getting in the combine, what just really stood out about him, Jacob?
Yeah, so I think with Theo Wease, it's kind of interesting because, we talk about the physical attributes with Luther Burden, and I think with Theo Wease, a lot of it is intangibles and football IQ. Because, you look at him, he didn't test incredibly well. That doesn't necessarily come as a shock to me. I mean, he's not particularly this deep speed burner who, looks like he's going to run a 4.3 in the 40-yard dash, and he's going to consistently, make guys miss in the open field. But he's a sure-handed pass catcher. I mean, it was a 3.2 drop percentage in 2024 and a 2.0 in 2023. So that goes to show he's getting all these targets, and he's played a valuable role in Mizzou's offense each of the last 2 years. So I think that with him, you have size, you have reliable hands, and then you have someone who knows how to get open. And even if he's not the most explosive, coming out of his breaks, and he doesn't leave guys in a cloud of dust, he can get NFL open. And I think that in an NFL game where the hash marks aren't as wide, you don't have as much space to work with if you're a receiver, it really relies heavily on the route running IQ, which I think Theo Wease has. I think there's definitely a ceiling with him where he's not the fastest guy, he's not the strongest guy, but I think he's someone who, as a late round pick, like 6th or 7th round, I think he should get selected. Just as wide receiver depth, someone who'd probably contribute well on special teams and can help out in a pinch if one of your starters gets hurt. So I definitely don't think that, like you said, I mean, Theo Wease is, he's not in the same conversation as Luther Burden in terms of, being a first round pick, but I still think he's a draftable talent. So he didn't necessarily wow at the combine, but that's never been his game. So I think the tape is going to speak for itself with him.
Payton, before you jump in there, I just want to point out something about some of those numbers from Luther Bird or from Theo Wease. It just really stood out. Of course, he didn't compete in the 3-cone drill, didn't compete in the 20-yard shuttle, but he competed in the broad jump, 9 feet 9 inches. He was 32nd out of 33 receivers. I mean, what does that just kind of say? Just about him, that maybe that there is something that maybe teams are looking at a little bit more just with his jumping ability.
Yeah, and I mean, it always helps to have a receiver who could jump really high. I think obviously you think about the 50-50 ball, like how big is the catch radius? Can they jump up and make catches that other receivers can't? But I do think, Theo Wease has solid height. He's got a solid arm length, good enough catch radius. And I think the ball skills make up for it too. So, I mean, that's not something I'm too worried about. I mean, obviously it goes against his ceiling a little bit as to what he could be. But I think that, at the same time, it's not necessarily super disappointing because that was never his game. It's not like I'd say like Theo Wease not jumping super high and whatever it was, like a 4.5 something that he ended up running in the 40-yard dash. It wasn't as disappointing as, say, an Isaiah Bond running a 4.41 or 4.39 or whatever after he told everyone he was going to break the 40-yard dash record. And, that's 0.2 of a second, slower than what you were telling everyone you were going to be. And I don't think Theo Wease was going to come out here and say, oh, yeah, I'll run a 4.3. That's just, not realistic compared to what you see on tape. So that's not something I'm too worried about. Like I said, it eats into a ceiling a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not a deal breaker.
Just shifting over to someone who not even in just Mizzou standards, but maybe as much as anyone else has seen his stock rise, is Armand Membou.
Yeah.
I know when he announced that he was going to the draft, a lot of people had him kind of in that day 2 range more than anything else, I remember, but it's kind of been building and building for him as people have gotten more into the tape. And then he just blew away all expectations at the combine, had the loudest 40-yard dash ever, but also ran a very, very good time for someone his size. So I'm just curious, where do you think, what are your impressions of Armand Membou? And after a combine like that, where do you see him landing in the draft?
Yeah, so I think that there was definitely a trend towards Armand Membou being a first-round pick going into the combine. I don't think that's necessarily changed. I think that it's just a matter of exactly where in the first round he's going to go. And I think there's a decent chance he ends up as a top 10 pick. And just because of the value of an offensive tackle, there were, some concerns with him. Okay, he's a shorter offensive tackle. What's his arm length going to be? The minimum threshold is 33 inches. He came in at 33 and a half. So length isn't necessarily going to be an issue with him. And then obviously for him to move the way he did, being 332 pounds and, running a 4.9 40-yard dash. I mean, that's a very difficult thing to do. And obviously, and part of that too, is he had one of the better 10-yard splits of the bunch. They had him at 1.74, which was tied for, I believe, I'm learning how to count now for the first time, tied for 7th among offensive linemen. And they had a good amount of offensive linemen there at the combine between the tackles, guards, and centers and everybody. So I think that, people knew that he was athletic. People knew that he was athletic, but it's just a matter of how athletic was he, and what he was able to put together in drills was impressive as well. You see someone with ideal arm length. You see someone with the athleticism, the strength, and for him to take the jumps in as a technician in terms of his flexibility and his hand usage. Even just from the start of the year, like I watched I watched the Boston College game over, and I was like, okay, this is a guy with tools. This is someone who can, develop into something. And the more I got into the season, like a little bit around like the South Carolina game, I was like, okay, this is an impact player. So he's someone I'm going to have a true first round grade on. And that's something where, independent of no matter who's in the class, no matter what the quality of draft is, this is someone who's going to go first round every single time. And that's something that I have on Armand Membou. I mean, I'd like to watch 1 or 2 more games of him before the draft, but at the same time, I mean, I feel like we know what we have at this stage. And with his physical tools and the way he just continues to grow and develop, I think that's someone's going to use a really high pick on.
4th in vertical jump, 1st in broad jump, and then 2nd among offensive linemen in bench press reps. That's an incredible, group there for Armand Membou. And NFL.com also placed him as gave him the number 1 athleticism scorer among all offensive linemen. So, really stood out there, Jacob. And I don't know if you know this too. He grew up playing tennis. He was like a skinny, tennis player, just really athletic. But he was growing into a bigger size, and they said, let's play football. Armand Membou played football, probably one of the best decisions that he could have made financially, career-wise, and just moving forward just in football and in that athletics as well. Yeah. For Brady Cook, this is last guy from the NFL scouting combine that Missouri got to send. It was a very Brady-esque performance, because going into this, people are like, oh, did Brady Cook really, was he the one that should have gone? He played into postseason bowls and the Hula Bowl and the East-West Shrine Bowl. And some evaluators say he looked better at the East-West Shrine Bowl. Really got no conversation, no talk at the Hula Bowl. Of course, a little bit on the lower end, but coming out, he just was one of the talk of the town. He was one of the best quarterbacks performing there athletically, just throwing wise as well. Got a lot of rave reviews. Being in Indianapolis, Jacob, just watching him in person, I mean, what just really stood out about him?
Yeah, so I'll say real quick. First, I'm a little disappointed that nobody brought up the coat bit that I'm wearing right now. I put on 4 layers for this.
It's cold in St. Louis. It snowed today.
It was. I was going to hope you guys are like, why are you wearing so many layers? And I was going to be like, oh, it's cold outside. And then ideally someone would say, oh, well, you're inside, right? And I'd be like, what? But anyway,
I think half the people that are consuming this podcast are also not seeing you right now, Jacob.
That's true. So like a good 50% of the audience is going to completely miss out on the bit regardless. But here I am. Anyway, to
Man,
go on,
how did it take so long to get you back on the show, man?
I know. You guys missed me or what?
Get on with it, please.
Yeah. So Brady Cook, I think you summed it up very well. It's the sort of thing where, he's been doubted his entire career, coming in as a 3-star recruit. I remember when they brought in, it was Jake Garcia, I believe. And it's like, oh, does he really have a chance against this former highly touted prospect? Cook beat him out. And, he's been, one of the best starting quarterbacks in Mizzou football history. And like you said, he got a Hula Bowl invite, played so well there that he got a Shrine Bowl invitation after the fact. And then, making it to the combine, not a ton of buzz, but I was really impressed with him. I think, especially with the fact that he ran a 40-yard dash and put together a 4.6 flat. I think that's a really impressive time. I mean, and I think that's something a lot of people just assume Brady Cook isn't a great athlete, like the people who don't watch Mizzou on a weekly basis. But I mean, you see Mizzou relied on him. They relied on his legs pretty often. And he showed that he was able to create out of structure or on those design quarterback keepers. So for him to run such a good time, to lead all quarterbacks, even though not a ton of quarterbacks really participated in it, it's still a nice little feather in his cap. But I think it's really the throwing drills that really impressed me the most. I mean, in a class where admittedly the quarterback position isn't all that great, I mean, I put together a ranking at Pro Football Network of the top 5 combine quarterbacks who performed. And I had Brady Cook as number 2, trailing only behind Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. I think that literally the only thing that separated Dart from Cook is the fact that Dart had a little bit more zip on his ball. And I mean, I think that, Brady Cook has an okay arm. I don't think that's necessarily a shocking statement, but what he was accurate. He was consistently able to, whether it was, shorter routes, whether it, you had your hook curl routes, you had your out routes, your corners, your posts. He was pretty consistently able to hit his guys in stride and to place the ball like right in the breadbasket. And that's something that's pretty difficult because I feel like in the combine, especially, there's such a bright spotlight on you and you're throwing to receivers you've never thrown to before. So obviously when you turn on the Mizzou tape, there are guys that he practices with, he throws to in the game. He knows, the tempo, he knows where his receivers like it. So for him to be just as accurate in a combine setting, granted, it's not against a defense, it's just against air, but still with receivers you're not super familiar with, and to be able to be accurate from all levels of the field, I thought was really impressive. So he's someone that I've been pretty adamant I'd use a late round pick on as a backup. And at first I was thinking, okay, maybe is this just my Mizzou bias talking as a fan, as an alumnus? But I think, he's really come to show in this pre-draft process. He's someone who's worth using a pick on. And with his athleticism, his accuracy, his toughness, and, the production that he's had at the SEC level, I think his resume certainly warrants a selection. I mean, he does, like I said, he doesn't have an incredible arm. So it's, it kind of limits exactly how high his ceiling is going to be. But I could see him, going as high as round 5 and being like, okay, yeah, I could see it. I think round 6, round 7 is a little bit more realistic, but, a solid day 3 pick to be a potential backup who can stick around for a while. That's a selection I'd be willing to invest if I was an NFL franchise.
He'll be able to say for the rest of his life he was the fastest quarterback at the combine. We could put an asterisk next to it because only 3 quarterbacks were in the 40-yard dash. He clocked in, of course, like you said, at 4.59. Louisville's Tyler Shuck, 4.63, and Memphis' Seth Hennigan, 4.76. So fastest guy, fastest gunslinger at the combine. You look at some of those other ones. He was the best in the vertical jump at 37 inches, just jumping out of his shoes. He was He did the broad jump 10-8 there. That was also the best among quarterbacks. So overall, just really sticking out in a lot of those athleticism drills. This is exactly what he needed. A guy coming into it where, like you mentioned, Jacob, maybe a late round, maybe UDFA even. If he doesn't really excel at this, he really boosted himself there. Payton, if you got one more question, fire away. But I still have one more for Jacob.
Yeah, I want to gauge the Jakesters' thoughts on if I gave you an over/under of, let's say, 3.5, because you have the combine guys, then you have Johnny Walker as well. Just Mizzou players that get drafted this year. What would you take the over on 3.5 or under?
I'd take the over, honestly, and I think that between Brady Cook, Theo, Wease, and Johnny Walker, those guys in particular you mentioned, I feel pretty good that, 2 out of those 3 get selected. I mean, obviously, Burden's going to get picked. Membou's going to get picked. They're both going to get picked pretty highly. But it's a matter now of where is Cook's good combine enough to propel him? I think it is. I think the tape speaks for itself, but also having a good combine helps as well. Johnny Walker Jr., I was a little bit surprised he got snubbed for the combine because, the production's there at the SEC level. He looked good at the Shrine Bowl. With that being, generally seen as the second biggest all-star game out on the circuit, a good amount of those guys end up getting combine selections. And what the NFL tries to do is they try to put together a list of players they anticipate will get drafted and invite all those guys. But I mean, that's never 100% accurate. Like I think it was 2 years ago, Kobe Turner, defensive tackle from the Rams, coming out of Wake Forest, he didn't get invited. He was a 3rd-round pick by the Rams. Now he's a high-impact starter. So just because Johnny Walker didn't get a combine invite doesn't mean he's not going to make it to the league. I feel pretty good, though, saying Brady Cook will get drafted and then one of Theo Wease and Johnny Walker Jr. Gun to my head, I don't think both of them get drafted, but I think at least I do think one of them does. So I'll go over on 3.5. I think it's definitely be huge, especially if you could possibly get 2 first-round picks. I think that'd be a huge win for the Missouri football program.
That's what I was going to ask, just where Johnny Walker stood there. And they have pro day at the end of the month, right after spring practice ends. So that'll be a big event for him and a lot of those other guys coming in. I don't think many people will care about this, but it is a guy I'm honestly interested in. And he does have that Mizzou tie with being a former Tiger. But Dominic Lovett was a guy when he went to Georgia, maybe high expectations to the wide receiver position, got invited to the Shrine Bowl this year. It feels like I've heard nothing about him since he got that invite. I mean, has Dominic Lovett even popped up on your draft boards, anything that you're looking at, Jacob?
Yeah, I mean, he's on my radar. I think, and part of that too was me, being a Mizzou fan going into it. But I remember, sporadically keeping in touch with Dominic Lovett. I mean, obviously, I feel like from an individual numbers perspective, I feel like the transfer over to Georgia didn't pay off maybe as well as he had hoped. Arguably he could have had a higher sample size at Mizzou if he stayed. But at the same time, I see someone he's a dynamic athlete. He ran really well at the combine. He's got that inside outside versatility. He can play the slot. He can play the boundary. He can play the field side. And I think he's a shifty route runner as well. I mean, he's not the biggest dude out there, not the strongest dude out there. The production is, so-so, but I think I wouldn't be shocked if he gets drafted, actually. I know for a fact NFL.com, they're, the rankings that they do, I believe it's Lance Zierlein who does who puts the grades together. It's him or Chad Reuter potentially. So I don't know exactly who did his Dominic Lovett's report. But I know they're pretty high on him as like a decent mid-late round guy. I think, again, day 3 is what you're looking at with him. But he looked good at the combine to me. And I was like, this is the most extensive look I've gotten at Dominic Lovett in a long time. Because just sporadically checking in on Georgia, maybe watch like another game of him or something. But yeah, I think someone's going to take a shot on him. He'll end up with an NFL team at the very least. You're not looking at, this guy's going to step in right away and be a star. But, it's a decent depth piece as someone who can compete for a roster spot. I think that's realistic.
I think he's a Bear. Right, Payton?
Jacob, one last question. I'll let you just talk general NFL draft here. Number 1 overall pick, Tennessee Titans, as of now, have it. If you're the Titans, who are you picking? Who do you think is the best player in the NFL draft?
Okay, so, because I am a big fan of the league in general. I just love football. I love the NFL, obviously.
Yep, we've established that. Go ahead.
We have. So as a fan of the NFL, I'd go Abdul Carter. I'd go Abdul Carter with the first overall pick. The Titans, they're in an interesting spot because Will Levis just finished up year 2, didn't look very good. The fact that he was a second-round pick and not a first-round pick means there's not as much significant tie to him being the guy, so to speak. But I'm just not impressed with this quarterback class. Like, I think Cam Ward is the only guy I'd consider with the number 1 overall pick. And even then, I think he's much closer to a Michael Penix, Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy tier of prospect than he is a Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels type. That's not bad. Obviously Bo Nix had a great rookie year. You can still do well with that. I just don't know how high the ceiling is for Cam Ward. And if that's someone he's going to be able to translate at a very high level right out of the gate in terms of getting the ball out quickly, making full field reads. So I'd go with Abdul Carter. That's another premium position, being an edge rusher. Usually if the first pick isn't a quarterback, it's usually an edge rusher. He's a tremendous athlete. The production speaks for itself, but I think that for as explosive, as powerful as he is, he develops so quickly in terms of the different moves he has to shed blocks, the ways he can penetrate the backfield. His instincts rushing off the edge, I think were a lot better in 2024 than people would expect for a guy who is moving from off-ball linebacker to edge rusher for his first year. I think there's a super high ceiling with him. So I'm in the camp where I'm not tying my job security to a quarterback I don't feel entirely confident in. I realize there's some quarterback desperation of, you take a shot on someone eventually, but I feel a lot more comfortable taking Abdul Carter. If you're not great in 2025, that's fine. You were literally the worst team in the NFL in 2024, so the expectations aren't all that high. Just if you can get better and if you can add a potentially elite talent at one of the most important positions in football, I think that's a no-brainer. So Abdul Carter for me, over Cam Ward, over Shadur Sanders, over Travis Hunter. I'm locking it in.
If you love hearing that voice, you can continue to listen more of Jacob Infante on Beers Over Bears. There are some overlap. I bet there are some good Chicago Bears fans that are Mizzou fans as well that might be listening. So they might know who you are already, Jacob. But they can find you on X at Jacob Infante 24. Of course, you are the lead NFL draft analyst for the Bears blog, Windy City Gridiron, and you're still focusing a lot more on just overall draft analysis for Pro Football Network. Jacob, any last words before we possibly never have you on again?
Wow. That's hurtful. That's a lot to digest.
It's up to Payton. He's the one who's kind of been up in the air about it.
Yeah. Well,
I was just told we were having you on like 2 days ago, and here we are, Jakester.
I know. Here we are.
What a tangled web we weave.
Truly. The last thing I have to say is I made a really good cacio e pepe recipe for dinner today. And you know me, it's Lent. I've got for people who can't see, I've got the ashes on my forehead, whatever. And you're supposed to fast. So I'm doing no alcohol, no sweets for 40 days. It's very tough. It's day 1.
It's like hour probably 4 for you.
I know. They had both cookies and donuts at work. And I went to a work happy hour from 5 to 6.
Oh man.
So it's the temptation is already there, but it's making me stronger. But anyway, I made a little serving of cacio e pepe for dinner as a way, to shed a couple lbs because the internet's calling me fat. So it turned out really well. If you'd like to hear it, you can add me on X or Twitter at Jacob Infante 24.
We already plugged it.
I know. I'm just saying straight from the horse's mouth.
You also have a Patreon, so if you want to buy Jacob a new jacket so he doesn't have to wear 4, you can get him that as well, or any sweets or
Careful
alcohol
with
that he
that
wants
Patreon.
next 40 days.
Yeah, it's cold out. It's cold out, so you gotta stay ready.
Well, that's Jacob Infante. I think we should just change it on our little YouTube graphic where it says Jack under Jacob. We should just change that to Jake moving forward. I feel like it'd be easier if Jacob comes on or if we have Jack back in that seat. But thank you again, Jacob, for joining us. Maybe we'll get you back on after the draft, and maybe you can talk about some of those Mizzou guys where they're ending up. But until then, we will end the show with quick hits.
Okay, quick hits time. We'll try and finish out the show on a positive note. Got Jersey of the Week to start. Kenny, your Jersey of the Week.
My Jersey of the Week goes to former Missouri offensive lineman Mitch Morse, who announced his retirement from the NFL on Thursday. They were recording this, spent some time with the Bills, the Chiefs, finished his career with the Jaguars. What I got up on the YouTube, though, is an article I actually wrote about Mitch Morse, so selfish plug here. Payton hit me with a thumbs up on Instagram, so thank you for that, Payton. But this was kind of cool. I totally forgot I did this, but Jack Sullivan and I, it was the bye week for Mizzou during the 2022 season, so we tried to go to this game to cover the Mizzou players, Nick Bolton and Mitch Morse playing in the Bills-Chiefs game. That was a big game during the 2022 season at Arrowhead. I remember there was a lot of hype behind it. So we tried to go to it. Didn't work out, but we got Mitch Morse on the phone, and awesome guy. When you think of offensive linemen with so much character, I think he is like Travis Kelce or Jason Kelce that just wasn't on the Eagles or in the huge spotlight. He had all the same characteristics, just a great guy, and gave some pretty just good quotes just about his time, what he spent with Mizzou, and then kind of coming back. And Kansas City was just home base because he played for the Chiefs, but at that point his career was with the Bills. And even in that article, I talked to him about this was 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago, so 2.5 years, just about what life looked like after football. And he didn't want it to happen soon, but 2 seasons later, he called it a career, and he said he wanted to just give it back to his family. And that was just the base thing. He talked about sacrifice, and it kind of really tied into his time with Mizzou and how much those guys sacrificed in order to make the Tigers work in the SEC. And that's exactly what they did with Gary Pinkel.
One of the more steady centers in the NFL while he was here. I'm surprised. I got almost a little confused when I read your headline because I was like, he was only in the NFL for 8 years, but no, it was 10 for him. So he did reach that decade mark. But very strong safety for a good number of years.
Strong safety?
Did I say safety?
You said he was a very strong safety.
Anyways, he's a part of that legendary photo.
He's going to ask me to take that out. I'm going to say no.
For the 2013 Missouri Tigers, legend for that photo alone.
Versatility. So those versatility
noted safety.
There's
I
four
love
centers on that offensive line in that photo.
Yeah,
there he goes.
I love cool offensive linemen with a personality, like Kenny was saying. It's just the best. They have the best war stories. They're literally in the trenches. They have so much aura, unmatched aura. Stop trying to pull up other tabs. Quit doing work. You're working right now.
No.
Lock in.
I was trying to pull up the photo to show what Payton was talking about. I couldn't
look up 2013 Mizzou O-line and you'll find it.
His kid's got it. He moved homes and he's not locked in. He's not on his guard as much, Payton, because his dogs aren't running around behind him now.
Nope.
There's the Mizzou O-line photo. Very, very good group of players.
Max Copeland, dentist.
Shout out Connor McGovern.
Roommate of Jack Nolan.
Yeah. Me and my buddy Connor McGovern. All right, Payton, what's your Jersey of the Week?
My Jersey of the Week is going to be Caden Green because via our good friend Max Chadwick, he was named a top 10 returning interior O-lineman in college football for the upcoming season by Max Chadwick at PFF. Caden Green is number 6. Makes sense. He had a very strong end of the year. A lot of people already have him on draft radars. So for a Mizzou O-line that's kind of going through a bit of turmoil, more like turnover. That's a very big
turmoil. Sorry, it's already dark. Payton's getting upset that we're making fun of his misspeaks.
No, I messed up. That's fine. Do you have anything to add?
I just the only thing I want to add is Jake Slaughter is about as good as an offensive line name as you're gonna find. Makes sense that he's number one. Seems fitting.
Not the
Slaughter.
only time we'll be talking about Slaughter during quick hits.
There you go. Illusion.
not.
Now I'm stuttering. I'm just gonna move on. My jersey of the week is Chris Abrams' Drain. He was back in town. And Alpo quote tweeted the post from Mizzou football. Chris Abrams' Drain, you can see him there posing with his Denver Broncos jersey. He said, "Man, I love it when your forward players come back home bearing gifts." So he gave him a little Chris Abrams' Drain jersey. Obviously, Alpo did a lot of work with CAD when he was at Mizzou. Hoping for a good season. Chris Abrams' Drain had some nice moments in the pros last year. That was really nice to see. Obviously, he's learning from a good corner over there in Denver, and Pat Surtain, won the Defensive Player of the Year award. So maybe teach him a couple thing or two. But excited for CAD's next season in the NFL. It's great to see him back in Como. It's gonna be nice when you got Membou and Luther entering the league too, like a couple more guys. Be nice to see some of those, to have more Tigers in the NFL starting next season. Guys hopefully come back to Columbia as well.
I can't believe how many gray hairs Alpo has in his beard already. That's crazy to me.
He coached high school football for like 12 plus years.
I know, it's just weird. I always think of Alpo as like a younger guy on staff, but
there's always some of those coaches I feel like where you think they're a lot younger than they are. I feel where you're coming from there, Payton. But coaching ages you too. I mean, think about how much he's got to go through. It's a stressful gig.
Yeah, I've also never seen Alpo without a smile on his face. Every photo that someone captures, he's grinning ear to ear. Another thing, they're both Alabama guys, so that's a big plus. Just with how that relationship was built over the last couple of years. There was a photo that resurfaced from Hard Knocks the preseason last year. The preseason, or I think it was the one for postseason and draft for the Giants, and you got to see the Giants draft board, and CAD was on there, and he had a color listed on him that meant like they were worried about his size, and ended up having a pretty notable rookie year. He saw some good plays there near the end of the season.
Yeah, that
turn on the tape.
Yeah, that reminded me, Kenny. I just had a conversation here in Alabama with somebody about obviously not an Alabama guy from there, but about the recruitment of Ennis Rakestraw. So that still sticks in the craw a little bit of Alabama fans, if that makes you Mizzou fans any happy, because obviously that was a big time recruitment there that Mizzou won out in. Anyway, thought I'd throw that in.
No cap, and he's the main bird.
Sean East, main bird of the week. Up next, Kenny. What's your main bird of the week?
I'm going to shout out at Somrith26 on X for just tagging us in this. I was a little bit surprised. We follow Som. I've not seen really us engaging with Som really that often, but
shout out Som.
Shout out Som. So Som said, "You guys got to give this guy a shout." Haha. So definitely going to give you a shout for adding us and listening to the show. But Joey Miller, the Zoo grad, KCOU grad, we know Joey well. He posted a video from this WBC qualifier game in Arizona between China and Germany. And there's a guy just playing the trumpet in the stands wearing a David Freese jersey and a Mesa Solar Sox, which is the AFL hat, just playing the Missouri Tigers fight song.
Unreal aura.
Yeah, it's just – I love the glasses too, the white glasses with red lenses. The guy's an animal. I mean, if we could find this guy, get him on the show, just ask him why. I mean, if anyone knows him, there's maybe someone in the comments, someone listening – please find this David Freese super fan. We'd like to talk to him and just see why he's playing.
Yeah,
Missouri
one
fight
question
song in this game.
the David Freese super fan.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was like, somebody needs to talk to this guy. Yeah. He's got a story to tell, and I want to hear it.
Man, this thing blew up too. Shout out Joey.
I realize it's a WBC qualifier game. Maybe the security is a little bit loose. I didn't know you could sneak a trumpet into a game. I didn't think that would be let through the metal detector.
But... Oh, they did talk to him.
Aha! Kenny, would you like? This is your quick hit, so I'll let you read.
Well, it says Lang. I hope it's not Jack Lang. He's got school to go to, but Lang is Maricopa resident who was a member of Missouri's marching band. The idea of bringing his trumpet to baseball games started 2 years ago when the World Baseball Classic was held in Phoenix. Here's a quote. A friend of mine told me, they'll allow you to bring in your trumpet, and sure enough, they allowed it, Lang said. I've also brought it to the Arizona Fall League, given the hat he's wearing, games and Caribbean League games. It's a lot of fun, and I'm glad to add to that experience of the fans.
I don't know who wrote this, but good on you for talking to this guy.
And yeah, now we even know more of a.
Oh, he's got a YouTube ballpark
There we
bugler.
go. So this is a thing. This is a thing he does.
Oh yeah.
Bugling the Caribbean. That's awesome. He calls it bugling.
I
We need
like
to get
this guy.
We need to get this guy. He needs to knock out all the major league ballparks. Like when he comes, they need to say special permission. He can bring his bugle, or his trumpet.
I don't know if he has a Twitter account.
Yeah, he should. We gotta start spreading this guy around. All right, we're becoming a ballpark bugle endorsing podcast.
We'd like to get this guy on. Shout him out.
Yeah, shout
Anyone
out
knows
the
him.
ballpark bugler. Lang. We don't know his first name.
We'll find
name
it.
is
I'll
Ballpark
look for the
Bugler.
story.
Something Lang. Yeah, we'll lock in.
Wait. There. He's got his he's got an Instagram and a TikTok and a Blue Sky.
Oh, he's on Blue Sky. The other
Oh, I like it.
There you go.
Payton doesn't like that though. All right, moving
Kenny
on.
doesn't either. Don't let him fool you.
Payton, your Shawnee's Big Bird of the Week.
Yeah, we just talked to Jacob Infante about the combine. I figure why not talk more combine because Missouri did so well. 3 Missouri Tigers were named. 3 of the 4 there at the combine were named to the all combine team. Brady Cook was named to the quarterback of the all combine team. Luther Burden was named to the wide receiver, obviously, and Armand Membou for the offensive tackle. If you're looking for a bird connection, Luther Burden for best team fits in this article on NFL.com. One of the fits was listed as the Atlanta Falcons, and Armand Membou was listed to the Bears, as Kenny liked to point out.
Yeah, Payton. I've been seeing a lot of Membou to the Bears mocks. How would you feel if they took him at 10?
Well,
Bears
now
fan.
it won't happen, but it would have been cool before they traded for Joe Tooney.
Oh, I missed that. I forgot they did that. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Oh, that's
Who wrote this article, Kenny? Let me shout him out. Mr. Nick Shook. Shout out.
Nick shook what?
Don't know.
Can we go back through, like, if we scroll to Brady again, which of those
No.
3, I think it was the Browns, Giants, and Raiders, which of those 3, let's pick which one. Which
Giants.
of those 3 would you like to see him
Giants,
on?
Giants.
Raiders.
Giants.
I feel like
Why
I'd be going
Giants?
Raiders. Why the Giants?
Isn't that where Locke is?
Oh,
He's still
that's
I
there?
don't think Locke's a free agent again, I think.
Oh,
okay.
then Raiders. Getting him in Brady's system. He's named after Tom Brady.
And Pete Carroll.
He wears
Coach
12.
Pete Carroll. Okay, go to Luther. What was Luther's teams?
Falcons
I think it was Falcons, Rams,
and
Steelers.
Steelers and Rams. The
Steelers.
Rams. I would love to see what
No, yeah,
McVay
the
could
Rams.
do.
Absolutely the Rams.
McVay would cook with Luther.
Yeah, Luther would be such a good, like, fun Hollywood player too. Fit the LA scene. All right, go to Membou. Let's do Membou quickly. I am enjoying this exercise. All right, Patriots, Jets, Bears, Texans, Chiefs. Oh, Texans, Kenny.
Let's go.
None of
Jets.
these.
What about the Chiefs? Could do
I
the
guess
Nick Bolton route.
Chiefs. No, not the Chiefs.
I
the
don't think
Jets.
he'd fall to the Chiefs.
He won't fall to the Chiefs,
Oh,
and I don't
yeah.
want him to.
I think he's a Jet.
New
I
York
have
Jets.
the highest mock I've seen so far for him is the Patriots at 4, which would just be wild. The 4th overall pick that would be just absurd in the best way. All right, there you go. There's our team fits for those guys. My Shawnee's main bird of the week is going to Caleb Grill. If you are looking for a bird connection, he went to Mays High School in Kansas. They're the Eagles. So there you go. Caleb Grill, he was named to the SEC Community Service Team. Pretty cool initiative that he's done for a while. And yeah, just kind of acknowledges men's and women's basketball players for their work in the community. Caleb Grill, I know there's a clip of all of them going to the Children's Hospital. I know he's done a bunch of stuff. Love to see that. Love to see Missouri represented on it at all. And good for Caleb Grill. Not the only award he will probably win from the SEC, as we alluded to in the Mizzou segment. But you know what? As negative as the games have been, this was a nice positive thing for Mr. Grill.
Agreed. I mean, anytime. I mean, Missouri is always well represented on kind of the teams like this. Obviously, Darius Mizzou is the one that pops into everyone's minds first, I'm sure.
Kenny?
I got nothing to add.
Wow. No care about the community
Focus
service
more
team.
on
That's fine.
the play on the court.
There
Someone had
it
to
is.
say it. I know
I was
someone out
gonna-
there's thinking it. I'm thinking it for them.
I was gonna just read what he did too. He's he participated locally in Columbia as well as back in Wichita, Kansas, where he's from. Children's Hospital, spent time there, visited the Boys and Girls Club, participated in its annual sneaker ball. So there you go. Helped with Wichita Public Schools as well. So thank you, Caleb Grill, for that. Payton, the best thing you learned.
Best thing I learned this week, Missouri women's basketball's Grace Slaughter was the 2025 SEC Women's Basketball Scholar Athlete of the Year. Her and Brady Cook are the two scholar athletes for Mizzou I can think of. They got the IQ. Also, Missouri women's basketball season did come to an end this week. They lost their first game against Mississippi State.
Yeah, we're now in the full coach search era. Finally,
Yep.
Go watch our interview with Mari on our last show. It was great talking with her about a bunch of candidates.
If the Mizzou Today board is any indication, plenty of people have watched it actually. So
beautiful things we love to hear.
Laird Veach is also going to talk to the media soon about this coaching search and what Missouri is looking for. So that'll be something to keep an eye out for.
Explicitly about the search?
Yeah, he said that was something that he'll be able to talk about what they're looking for, coach.
Okay, interesting.
Got that from Kyle. Kyle put that on our board.
We'll have to recap that and see what he says. Yeah.
Also, Payton, I told you that we were going to talk about another Slaughter, and it was literally something you chose.
I forgot who at first. I added this to the doc 2 days ago, man. I forgot.
You're well prepared. I'll give you that.
Here's what Kyle said. Media will get a chance to meet with Laird Veach about the coaching search Friday.
All right.
That's the day this comes out.
Yeah.
Looking forward to we'll have to recap. We'll have to recap that on Sunday's show. We'll talk about it. Kenny, best thing you learned?
Best thing I learned on my way up to moving to St. Louis, stopped in Little Rock. Peyton's not excited for this one.
Left for this segment.
He left the segment. I stopped in Little Rock. My mom lived a couple years in Pine Bluff and then went to a year at UARC. So still have some connections there and talked to a family friend there. She's a massive Razorbacks fan. Like she knows everything. Like she spends her time on her back patio watching these baseball games. But she told me she still has a soft spot for Trevor Brazil. Understands like he just never was the same guy when he came back.
Boo!
Trevor Brazil. Yeah, I'm gonna have to also boo this one, Kenny. I can appreciate your feelings.
Get to finish it, but she mentioned how she and like a lot of her Arkansas fans, of course, or friends, of course, don't really see Mizzou as a rival just because of their history and what they grew up watching as
come back here and boo that.
Longtime Arkansas fans. I will add though that she went to Central, so that's where Anthony Kennedy goes in Little Rock. So we got to talk about that. She was hyping up Little Rock Central.
They do have the good high school pipeline. You know what? I can't. I still can't.
I'll add, Payton, she did admit she's very, very, very nice woman. I love her. Like she's a great family friend. We're
not doubting that, Kenny.
Yeah, I'm just saying. But she did add that she knows Mizzou has kind of beaten up on Arkansas the past couple of years in basketball.
Yeah, because they have.
Can you clip that, Jack? I want that audio.
Yes, just because they have. Yeah, we can use that. We can use that for some sort of nefarious purpose. All right. Get him off the screen. My best thing I learned this week. We're going with a little UFL action because the Michigan Panthers, not the Memphis Showboats. There was some drama in this, apparently. The Michigan Panthers have signed former Mizzou safety Tyree Gillespie. It was not the Memphis Showboats. It was originally reported by Mr. James Larson that he had signed with the Memphis Showboats. Of course, he was a fourth-round pick out of Mizzou to the Raiders, but is now plying his trade in the UFL. But apparently he's going to the Michigan Panthers. I don't know where the disconnect went there. Was there some sort of tampering? I want to know more about why I've been distracted. Obviously, it's great. You know, I love Tyree Gillespie. We watched him for 2 years when we were at Mizzou. He had some great seasons at the end of his career there. Became a fourth-round pick. That's all fine and dandy. I want to know if there's some sort of drama here between the Panthers and the Express. Like, what happened? What happened with the? I said the Memphis Express. That's a G League team. The Memphis Showboats. What was there some sort of tampering? How did Michigan pull him away? But congrats to Tyree Gillespie for the opportunity. Obviously,
I love this. Get a guy that loves is it UFL?
Yeah, UFL.
UFL now? Yeah, get you a guy that loves UFL transactions as much as James Larson does. He got the original just report about it just from seeing it on the Fox Sports page for Tyree Gillespie, and then someone probably tipped him off and said,
someone
"Hey,
I know.
huh?"
This sounds like someone I know,
Well,
kind of
I knew you were
carving
gonna
out a
say
niche
that.
with a transactions page.
This is a lower end football league. It is the second biggest actually third biggest pro football league. 'Cause we'll throw college up there ahead of this. But I do find it funny that someone probably tipped him off after and say, "Hey, that was wrong on the Fox Sports page. We signed him," because he has sources and he has connections to the UFL and being an XFL, USFL reporter. I think that's really funny.
Yeah, that is kind of wild. But after
Alex
a
Magoo
long-winded,
set to re-sign with Birmingham is his pinned tweet.
It popped
Shout
off.
out Alex Magoo and FIU.
got the breaking in there. Congrats, Tyree Gillespie, great safety.
Yeah,
That's,
congrats. Anyone know what DeMarcus AC is up to? I know he's probably recruiting right now. Anytime we can talk about the 2019 Mizzou DB room, I'm down.
He finished his degree at Mizzou recently while he's on staff at Purdue. And it's cool that Barry Odom kept him
Sparks
around.
did too.
Who?
Jadarius Sparks.
He's just trying to name DBs, Kenny. You just got to let him go.
Joshua Bledsoe.
I know Joshua Bledsoe.
Yeah, of course.
You don't remember Jadarius Sparks? He had the pick.
What about
six
Tyree
in the South
Gillespie? Do you remember
Carolina game.
him?
Shame on you. I think now you're having me doubt.
All right. That's all I got. Peyton, do you have a joke to finish this show?
No, now I want to know if Jadarius Sparks was the one that picked off the pass.
I thought that was Gillespie against South Carolina.
I know it wasn't Gillespie.
Or was it AC?
Here, I'm going to steal a joke from SpongeBob. This is not from our favorite TV series, The Today Show. This is from a different TV series, SpongeBob. Guys, why couldn't the kid go see the pirate movie?
It was rated R.
Yeah, R. I can't find it. I'm not going to find it in time. Just end the show.
All right. We'll save it for next time. We'll have your answer for you. Hopefully, we have a more fun Mizzou men's basketball result to recap. If not, well, we'll continue to just be negative Nellies. We did it all of last year. We can do it again, damn it. All right. Hope everyone enjoyed this week. I was back together for the first time in a little bit. Kenny's now settled in his new locale. More local for you guys as well in Missouri. As you saw in his U-Haul address that I'm definitely not going to blur out of the show. All right, bye.